a study do it in Sultan Qaboos University about the efficiency. We found there is a chance to reduce the consumption in most of the buildings in Oman between 10 to 30% at least to reduce the consumption. So normally before we are moving to install a solar power plant for our clients, we're doing energy auditing to audit the building. Then we decided which type of solar system we'll use.
Tejarah Talks.
Welcome to the Tejarah Talks podcast that brings you conversations and discussions with innovative and inspirational members of the Oman business and investment community. I'm Adham Al Saidi, co-founder of the firm for business and economic consulting, and I'm joined today with Haider Zaabi and engineer Abdullah Al Saidi, who are experts in both manufacturing and sustainable practices. Haider, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, so my name is Haider Al Zaabi. I'm a co-founder of Mace EV. I'm sure most of you have seen the electric car, Omani version Mace. So we've launched 2 years ago with the first prototype, which is a sports version of the Mace. For us, it's been a very exciting journey so far. So since we've launched, we've got over 500 reservations on that specific prototype, and we've seen the demand going higher, and we've seen the market. So we're not talking just about Oman, but also GCC. The electric car market is huge and it's growing year by year. And not just that, we're seeing the demand is much higher than the supply. So that also got us progressing further into creating different products and how can we go to market faster, even with a mass product like the Mace SUV that I'll touch up on as well later on.
That sounds very exciting. I would love to learn more about Mace, definitely.
Definitely.
Engineer Abdullah, welcome. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Abdullah Al Saidi, CEO and co-founder of Nafath Renewable Energy. I was studying electrical engineer, and my final year project was automatic dust cleaning machine, dry cleaning. And I decided to start my own company by using that robot in 2012. But when I come to the reality and to the market, I found there is no solar panel at all in Oman. So I decided to build a solar company to provide the solution and to provide sustainable and renewable energy solution. We keep growing up since that time till today, and we see the market how start moving, especially when we start, because most of the people on that time, they are focused on oil and gas sector, and nobody in Oman looking for this opportunity in renewable energy sector. So we decided to take the lead on that opportunities. Today, alhamdulillah, we are leading the market. Almost we handling more than 56% from the project on mid-scale and utility commercial and industrial project around the Sultanate. We are working in all region around Oman, and also we are excited to train a lot of students and engineers for Oman in renewable energy design, installation, operation and maintenance.
Over the past 10 years, Nafath has worked on some of Oman's most important digital transformation projects, including the Invest Easy portal and the Omani Census 2020. We've also been committed to developing local entrepreneurial talent through our Oman Talent Hub. With digital transformation playing a key role in Oman's Vision 2040, we're excited to see what's next for the country and how we can continue to be part of its journey.
Haider, I'll come back to you and ask why Mace?
Yes.
Why go down that road of EVs?
Definitely. So when we started, I remember me and my partner, we were having coffee at this coffee shop. And that's where the idea emerged. So we were looking at the cars around us, and I remember we were noticing that we couldn't find any electric cars. And hence the world is already, in some countries, you see majority of cars are electric. And not just that, it's the fact that most cars also look alike. So we thought, okay, that's an interesting problem. How can we solve it? So it got us kind of exploring this area further. And when we asked people, or when we saw what people prefer, we actually saw that most of them, they do prefer EV or electric cars, but it's just not yet available, or it's too expensive. So we thought, how can we kind of solve that by providing this car where it's accessible, affordable, as well, looking very different and designed kind of more futuristic, because that's one gap that we're trying to fill, is that most good-looking cars are usually very expensive. So we thought of how can we also bring that down. So since we started, the first challenge came actually is that how can we produce cars to start with, starting from Oman. So we looked into different regions, like from India, from China, from Europe, from Turkey, and also from within Oman, previous experiences. So after kind of collectively meeting with a lot of different expertise around this region, we found that it's not something impossible. It's very possible. There are certain steps you have to follow. And we built a lot on previous experiences for us to go and move faster in producing the prototype.
But I would imagine that running EVs at any place in the world requires energy, Engineer Abdullah.
Yes.
And the challenges of making that energy environmentally friendly, sustainable, and economically viable. Does your work the past 10 to 11 years in Nafath reflect that there are improvements in this area that assist Haider and ideas like his with EVs to become realities in places like Oman or the GCC?
See, at the end, all electric car, it's need energy source. And in Oman, because we start this sector for renewable energy since 2017, so there is enough experience to provide the source of clean energy for all EV. But of course, that also will affect on the total demand, because as people moving from using the old technology in all cars consuming fuels, they will start consuming electricity. So everybody have to prepare the infrastructure. We have to even prepare the grid technically, because if we look to the grid on the Sultanate, we found the demand, we have actually two type of peak. Season peak during the summer, because most of the people consuming electricity for cooling system, and the other peak at the day hours from 12 p.m. till 5 p.m. Now with a new concept for electrical car that may will affecting or shifting the peak from afternoon to be at the night, because most of the people, they will install EV charger at their home, so they will start charging their car at the night. So nowadays, for example, the plan for Oman Grid to increase the capacity of solar to shape the afternoon peak by using solar, but in the future that may will change. So we have to be ready. We have to do more analysis. We have to do a lot of grid study to see the impact of consuming electricity for electrical car. But also for us as Nafath, we are working a lot with a lot of companies who are responsible about petrol station around the Sultanate to install EV charger. For example, if you take the expressway, now we have more than 7 to 10 stations to charging electrical car.
Where can I find these stations if I'm...
On the expressway and the oil station, for example, with Oman Oil or Shell. In most of those petrol stations, they have...
How long does it take for you to charge your car? Let's move from light vehicles to heavier vehicles, for example, or, transport, cargo, logistics. Is that a viable model in your mind? There are charging stations, and that provides us an infrastructure solution. Is it fast enough? Is it going to serve, logistical connections between cities in Oman?
See, actually, the electrical car little bit will change our culture at the end.
Yes.
It's similar as any new technology. So most of new electrical car nowadays, you will charge it at home for the cities, because especially in Oman, everybody have his own villa and they can install EV charger. But also for charging station, we have two type: fast charger and the normal charger, which can charge the car for 6 hours or 8 hours. Most of the people, they will charging at their home for 6 hours to full charge. But for petrol station, they using normally fast charger. It will take between 15 to 20 minutes to full charge for the car to drive later 400 kilometers. Also, the new model for petrol station, it's designed to handle the EV charger station with coffee shops. So rather than you stop for 10 minutes, to refilling petrol, you will stop for 30 minutes, 25 minutes for full charge. Then you will take coffee break, and
which is always good as a business model for those particular stations to expand their offering, if you like. Haider, let me get back to you on the manufacturing part, which you've mentioned, you've been exploring. So we're looking at options where it makes your business model more viable in a place like Oman. But to be sustainable in manufacturing, there's more to just simply electrifying your power source or using less thermal versus other sustainable energies. But with the parts, there's always going to be a challenge.
Yes.
How do you manage that as a small company that is looking into an exciting field that we know very little about in this part of the world?
So for us, I mean, the beauty of this product itself is that it's no emission product. Like we are contributing towards shifting people from petrol cars to electric cars and hence kind of driving zero emission vehicles. But the process of manufacturing these cars and the process of mining the lithium and all of that comes to kind of assemble and manufacture these parts do contribute badly to the environment. So we are kind of looking at different ways. How can we eliminate or reduce these parts? So we're following a lot of examples of the big OEMs. So for example, even from designing the part itself, how can we design parts that it can be reused after the lifetime ends? As well, for example, the packaging of certain elements within the car, like the wood material that is used or the plastic, how can it be done using composite materials or materials that are environmental friendly and will be recycled after the end part? And of course, dealing with the suppliers, as you mentioned, it's important that we pick and choose the right suppliers. I mean, cost is one element, but then also, are they following environmental regulations? Are they do they have the certain regulation that we look at, the ISO, IATF, that covers their practices in terms of producing and manufacturing environmentally friendly products or environmentally friendly methods? Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you, Haider, is that you're going beyond scope 2 when we talk about how do you manage emissions that you produce and others produce.
Yeah.
But is it a must? Or can you get away with managing your own emissions within your own supply chain and your suppliers should be responsible for theirs? Taking that extra step obviously costs time and money,
yes,
and follow-ups and audits. And so where do you stand from that?
So, I mean, from our side, the minimum requirement is just producing a product that meets the requirements of the GCC and GSO standards, and Oman basically.
And are those standards clear? Are they, published and accessible somewhere where, as a manufacturer, I can access them easily?
Yes. So the electric vehicle manufacturing policy was announced recently for the GSO. But the previous ones, they're all clear and they're available and accessible. And not just that, they're quite, I could say, heavy in terms of regulation. Like the regulation that we follow is similar to the European standards. So, okay. I mean, it's good and bad. It's one area that require more effort and cost. But then the good part is that, okay, you have a product that you can basically sell almost anywhere around the world. And just going back to the point of when you mentioned if it's a must. So it's not a must. This is an extra requirement, but then it almost becomes a must because there is such heavy demand from investors and at the same time from a lot of the consumers. Because don't forget, consumers buying electric cars are usually environmentally conscious consumers. So they would kind of ask these questions. They would ask what would happen with the battery later on. And so do investors. So that us going the extra mile mostly comes from this pressure that is exerted on us from investors and from consumers that we feel.
Which is exciting to see the push and the pull in this business model of yours. And Abdullah, Haider had mentioned standards, and some come from the region and some obviously are coming from out of the country or out of the region. Where does the renewables, especially you've spoken about solar, where do you lie in those regulations? Which ones do you follow? Which ones present challenges for you? Do we have a complete set that is useful for you as an operator in Oman as you're expanding?
Yes, actually, in Oman we have Oman Electric Standard, which explain for and put the standards for all infrastructure for electrical, and part of that EV charger following the same standard. And also for us as a solar company, before the regulation till April 2017, our area was limited and we cannot expand very well. But within the regulation, it became very clear, and the direction for Oman was very clear since April 2017. Then that give us more freedom to move faster, to install a new power plant and to deal with.
So what happened in April 2017 that allowed you to expand into these new areas?
Actually, the Public Service Authority announced the new regulation for solar energy sector. That regulation allow people to install a solar system in their commercial or industrial or residential building, and that allow people also to feed back the extra energy to the grid, and they put a new type of meters, bi-directional meter. It can account any energy you will take it from the grid, or any extra energy you will send it to the grid, because normally the solar system producing during the day hours when we have solar radiation, but at the evening, rather than installing battery or installing another source of energy, it's easily you can take your demand or your consumption from the grid. But also during the day hours, you will not be at your building, or that day will be off for that factory, so you can sell all that energy back to the grid with incentive. That's enable a lot of people to start installing solar system. But also back to the comments from Haider about the energy resource for electric car. There is very important question. A lot of people raise that question. For example, they said, still we generate energy from oil and gas, even if we charge our electric car from the grid. But still, it's better for us to using electrical car, because the efficiency of burning gas in power plant higher than burning oil in the car. And also we can manage those emissions comes from power plant easily compared to manage those emissions from cars.
But that would ultimately be a transition solution in terms of focusing, as we do in Oman. About 97% of our energy production is thermal from natural gas. But can we sustain that into the future and assume that we can capture most of the emissions that come out of the process?
See, actually, still, when we are going to use electrical car in the future within the advanced technology, with the new innovation in renewable energies, even in solar or wind or thermal, if we have the infrastructure for electric car, EV station, charging those cars, regardless from your home or from charging station, it will be easier for everybody to install, for example, a new power plant, renewable energy. Like
and power plants, you're referring to microgrid at homes or at factories or office buildings, that kind of...
No, it's better to link it with the grid. Similar now we have in Oman Abri power plant as a solar power plant, one from the largest project on the Sultanate. Now that's feeding to the grid. But also we can install a wind power plant on Thamreit, and it will feeding the same grid. For all electrical car around Oman, that's mean if we have a target now till 2030 to have 30% from our energy generation from renewable energy, that's mean 30% from electric car consumption come from renewable energy source. So it will be easier for people to manage the grid rather than managing those small car and fuel station to reduce the emissions. And by the way, even today, most of the fuel station on the expressway on Muscat working by solar.
Okay, that's interesting. To run their pumps and...
Yes, and this is impressive and we feel exciting, and we see a lot of oil and gas companies, they take leading on renewable energy sector.
Okay. So Haider, I want to come back to you because there's a lot to unpack there with Engineer Abdullah. But something that catches my attention that both of you have spoken about is emissions and reducing emissions at some point. But the ultimate debate is, do we go zero emissions or net zero? How does it work for you as a small manufacturer in an exciting new development in EVs? Zero emissions or net zero?
So, I mean, in terms of driving the car, zero emissions, net zero. I mean, I understand there is the target by 2050 by the government to go net zero. And that contributes, I mean, or that is a very collective role between very different players or stakeholders here in the energy. But as from our side, the transportation, we play around almost 20% of that role, of all the emissions being produced from the heavy vehicles as well as the light vehicles. So the plan for net zero in that area is electrifying all cars as well as moving to green hydrogen for some use cases. So definitely we are on that path towards net zero. And in terms of driving a car, you'll be driving it zero emissions. So yeah, we're trying.
So there will be a bit of mix of both, depending on how.
And I think Engineer Abdullah mentioned a good point as well about how do we reduce emissions in general. Like there is a lot emissions being produced. So for example, mining lithium-ion battery is one of the practices that produces a lot of emissions, and it's bad for the environment, and there's a lot of regulations around it. But in the future now, we're looking at a lot of recycling initiatives and companies being able to recycle a full lithium-ion battery and take all these components and parts and then produce new batteries from those components. And that would take us to a very interesting future where you would be able to basically create cars even cheaper than today. The lithium-ion would cost even cheaper, and it would be much better for the environment.
It's going to be as efficient, though, when we recycle and use a circular economy, if you like, or a circular supply chain. Designed to be reused, as you've mentioned. Do we lose some efficiencies with these materials as we reuse them, recycle them, recollect them?
In a lot of cases, yes. But as recycling technologies do advance, then we do reach very good kind of comparable results.
Right. Engineer Abdullah, you did mention power plants. And in my mind, I'm seeing a lot of these smaller ones working in manufacturing areas and manufacturing cities. From your experience, are manufacturers leaning more into this and you have to design these plants for them? Or do you do it collectively for specific industrial areas? So are we looking at micro / or at the industry level usage of renewable energies?
Actually, we have two types of power plant for individual consumption or self-consumption, we call it. And normally, the big manufacturer and even some residential and commercial building, they build their own solar power plant or renewable energy plant, and the regulation allows them to consume that energy totally from renewable energy resources, and if they have extra power, they can sell it to the grid. But normally, for scale of economy, if we are going for large power plant, the cost will be cheaper. So normally in industrial area, we try to collect more than one manufacturer, and we build a central power plant for them, and that power plant will feeding all those manufacturers. But also we can use windy area. The area from Ras Al Had till Thamret, all those areas have very good potential for wind project, and we can connect it directly to the grid. Normally, or technically, most of solar power plant, you can connect it in both way, even for self-consumption or with the national grid in the desert or whatever to feeding the natural grid. But for the for wind power plant, normally we prefer to connect it to the grid directly because it's change the wind speed within second. Compare the radiation from the sun, almost fix, and we know it for the full year.
Right.
So we prefer normally to use also the large wind turbine. Each one can producing 7 mega. Sometimes single manufacturer consuming 1 mega, 2 mega, and single wind turbine can producing 7 mega. So it's better to connect it to the grid.
Interesting that you've mentioned that using wind turbines. I've seen in one of the GCC capitals that they've integrated 2 sort of turbines, wind turbines, into the building's design to generate. And this takes me to the idea of are building codes and regulations becoming more sustainable? And if so, what kind of things are changing today that were not there, let's say, in the last decade or so?
Yes, actually, we have to improve the building code, and because we have to focus in many different things. We have to focus on the machines which we use it at our buildings normally to be more efficient. For example, the air condition, the old one, window one, consuming more around 4 kilowatt hour consumption. But the split unit, the new one, it's consuming for the same quantity of cooling less than 1.5. So also this is back again to the culture. So we have to increase the awareness for people. It's better for you to increase the payment when you buy a machine within high efficient. That means it will consume less energy.
But
also
often, Engineer Abdullah, many of us don't like to pay more for these things. When they're tagged with, higher efficiency, how do we communicate that? And this also is for you, Haider. If I'm going to pay another extra riyals for buying, the Mace EV, how do I convince people that these codes are working for them? These efficiency improvements?
Yes, normally people, they respond better when they see the numbers and they see the impact for their own income. And it's easily, if you do the calculation and if you look to your electric bill, you're paying more and more, and the tariff will keep increase it annually. So it's better to pay, for example, 10% more when you buy a new machine, rather than paying 30% more monthly in your electric bill. So normally when we sit with the people, so for that reason, we at Nafath, we are very active in the social media to increase the awareness. Because when the society receiving this message from the manufacturer, they didn't respond well, and they feel this is only for marketing. But when we talk to our client, they feel confident. Yes, this is good advice. We have to focus on the efficiency, but also the material efficiency, and also the building. And sometimes you can get a gaps on the windows and in the doors, and the outside temperature is 50 or 45, and you need to keep the temperature inside the building below 25. That's consuming huge energy. So through a study do it in Sultan Qaboos University about the efficiency, we found there is a chance to reduce the consumption in most of the buildings in Oman between 10 to 30% at least to reduce the consumption. So normally before we are moving to install a solar power plant for our clients, we're doing energy auditing to audit the building. Then we decided which type of solar system we'll use.
I'm assuming this is also for industrial purposes, the audits as well?
Yes, this is very important.
If you go to Haider, for example, right now, and Haider has a setup, say, in one of the industrial areas, what kind of advice would you give him to kind of set up his manufacturing plant, small or medium or large? What kind of things would you be telling him that these are the materials or the setup?
Yes. Normally we start by do auditing. If the building is there, we will do the auditing. If it's not there, for next building, yes, we will review the design with them to see the design, if they take care about isolation. Even for the lighting system, they have to, especially on industrial area, they have a big roof, so they have to allow the sunlight to pass through the roof rather than using electrical lighting. Then we will look for their cooling system, and we will give him advice which type of cooling system they have to use and how they have use isolation material to keep the system cool. Then we will look to their production line, which type of machine they use and what's the impact for that machine, and also how it will consume within the time, if the efficiency for those machines will going better or less.
And that
then we will
turns my attention to Haider back again.
That's amazing. Then you'll be getting a call from us.
Exactly. But I'm thinking, there's a lot of good stuff going on there, but I'm sure you have very specific machines that you need to use, especially because, you're in an industry that probably you'll be making much of your parts
Yes.
on site, whether you're 3D printing them or molding them or prototyping them. Now, this sounds very exciting from a technological point of view, but is it also aligning with the green credentials you're looking for as a manufacturer?
Yes, I mean, in terms of the, for example, when I mentioned the net zero by 2050, one big part of it is also the building and how we do it. And I think, as Engineer Abdullah mentioned, looking at every process, the line that we have, how much power we're consuming, how can we reduce that, for example, with solar? Is there any kind of wastages or things being replicated where we're kind of using or duplicating the same power where we can just use it once? Again, with the cooling system, the design of the building. So it's almost all of these elements mentioned together. So you'd be surprised after you implement all of these different changes and then you see the result. You'll be, it's not just good for the environment, but it's good for you in the first hand. And I think there's always rooms for improvement. So no matter where we, for example, our starting point, like our current way of doing things, then definitely getting expertise like Engineer Abdullah. And I think this is also an opportunity for a lot of people to be in this industry because there is a lack of good expertise. For example, as what you mentioned in terms of covering all these different aspects and giving you a sort of a consultation and then next steps, that is impressive.
So, Haider, let me ask, where are you set up in Oman?
So currently we're in Barka.
Barka.
And we're looking to move to Sohar or Khazain next to you guys. But yeah, I mean, the incentives that we're comparing is especially for the shipment and for receiving the shipments, for moving to the nearby markets in UAE and in Oman. And
so what kind of setup do you have right now? Is it a workshop? Is it a small plant, production?
You can say a very small plant. Where we do the prototyping, we do the workshops. I think you mentioned 3D printing.
Yes.
So at one point, we also need to 3D print some parts as well as small prototypes of mace. And it was a discussion. We either buy the machinery or do we outsource it to another SME in Oman that is an expert in 3D printing. So we did option B, and it was more feasible for us. And also getting to learn from another SME basically. And
who are you working with in this field?
We worked with two companies. One of them is called Innovation Factory.
Yeah.
They also do a lot of 3D printing applications. There's a lot of use cases we discussed with them as well for the future. And definitely there is a lot of room or elements where we work with SMEs. Also within our own team, there is some certain IPs or technologies we're working on, calling it one software areas where we're trying to enhance the AI, and others where it's mechanical recharging mechanism within the car to increase range. We signed it with the SQU Renewable Research Center, Renewable Energy Research Center, and basically for how can we develop this IP or this technology further, as well if any student having any ideas within the mechanicals of cars or in terms of enhancing the battery technology or the range, they're welcome to kind of sandbox on within our car.
So those collaboration lines are working. And it struck me that you've mentioned SME collaborations working together, because we know SMEs don't work very well together generally. They compete with each other. But Engineer Abdullah, are SMEs, I would imagine like yourself, leading the way in this discussion about sustainable manufacturing, renewable energies, and creating impact, where larger companies might find it more difficult, not high on their priorities, or a more expensive process?
See, actually, when you start, it will be easier for you to start immediately with sustainability concept and to be high efficient from the beginning, rather than later you back and try to modify that. That will be more expensive for you. If we take Haider production line example, it's better for them to sit, for example, with Nafath as expert team on energy auditing and help them from the beginning to design the production line. And actually for us from the beginning, we believing on sustainability and we believing on reducing emissions as a company from when we start. For example, we reducing printing papers and we reducing the plastic inside our office, and we take long time till we decide we will buy a printer at our office, for example, just to avoid printing any papers. So for us as a startup, normally we have to be more innovative, and we have to look for all our exercise during our journey. It's better for us, and also it will reducing the cost at the end, because in any business process, at the end, the target at the end to be profitable. If you are using sustainable methods and recyclable methods, and that will help you actually to reduce the cost. And
I want to challenge you there, because we've had discussions about this where you talked about how the process of the lithium-ion batteries and the solar panels are in themselves damaging in the production process. So there is a bit of a conundrum here, because you're in an industry where you're trying to counter all of those effects. So is it possible to be able to, come out with a clean sheet?
See, at the end, it's depending what's the definition of cleaning sheet. Do we want to reach zero emissions? When we say zero, I see it in a little bit, it will be difficult for everybody to reaching that, because the carbon at the end part of the environmental, and there is a normal process in the environmental producing the CO2. So, but we have to reduce that quantity of carbon emission which we produce it by improving our process, by improving our innovations. And for that reason, we have to also invest on R&D and the collaboration between the startup and SMEs, and normally most of the startups starting from universities.
Yes.
So that's very good environmental to help them to be innovative, and also to work in some research and development to improve their product at the end.
All roads will lead to 44.01.
Yes.
I'm sure that they'll need to expand their capacity to capture that. Gentlemen, we've heard a lot of exciting things about how manufacturing generally, but more specifically your companies, Mace and Nafath, are working to improve reduction in emissions and meet those targets that Oman had set itself. But I'm sure the business model works very well, but it needs to be tested and retested and redesigned. But what kind of final thoughts, Haider, come to mind as we move forward thinking about how to keep manufacturing more sustainable or improve its sustainability?
So definitely on sustainability itself, I think, as Engineer Abdullah mentioned, there's a lot of lack of awareness in this area. And one thing comes in mind whenever you mention sustainability or environmentally friendly, people assume that it's only environment. But it's the contrary. I mean, it's not just for the environment. You are one of the biggest benefiters as a company, consumer, and as well, it's not just economic value, but also social value. So a quick example. So for example, when you look at solar buildings, installing solar in the homes, it's not just to look good or it's something for the environment, but it's actually feasible. It's economic value for you. You're going to be ending up getting some free energy that not just free, but you can also send it back to the grid. You can make money. But other than that, it goes with all other examples. With cars as well, it's not just green or friendly, but it's also more feasible. It's 10 times cheaper than fuel. You save costs on maintenance. It's convenient. It's nice and it's pleasurable. And same goes with even smaller examples, like, for example, a small cup. When you compare like a plastic cup or environmentally friendly paper cup or something from a composite material, it's not just about the quality, but also the drink in it. The quality will be better. Health-wise, you'll be better. And then you have the big social benefit is that when you're kind of doing all these different environmental friendly practices, you actually are kind of applauded, or you look good in a sense, since you're contributing that. So it works, I think, in all scenarios. So it's just for us to kind of reconsider sustainability whenever we hear that word. It's no longer just about being efficient, but it's actually better, and you reap a lot of economic value from it.
Sounds like a way of life, as
Yes.
you describe it. Definitely. Engineer Abdullah, any final thoughts?
Actually, the sustainability, it is very important for everybody, and that will help us actually to sustain to doing our business, because any impact to the environmental, that immediately will affect our business process. So we have to take care about our environmental, and also we need more a startup and SMEs in Oman to take the lead in this sector. There is a huge potential for that, and I see there is a big potential for a lot of students in the universities to do their innovation, to do their research and development, to have a new technology that will help Oman to reach our target in 2050, zero
Inshallah.
emissions.
All right. So a couple of questions come as we wrap up here. How much would it cost me to set up, a small EV plant on our power plant, solar, in a typical home?
Normally, most of the people in Oman consuming per villa around 12 kilowatt, the average consumption. And that will cost around 4,000 Omani Riyal only to install.
For the setup. So it would probably cost me about $10,000.
Yes, for the setup,
Right.
for the full setup within all approvals process, and that with guarantee for 30 years to keep feeding the villa by clean energy. And normally it's not equal 3 to 5% from the total investment value for the residential villa.
Right.
So it is negligible numbers, yani. But we have to reach to the people from the beginning to plan for their building from the beginning very well.
Absolutely. That's correct. Haider, I'm curious. I understand there's a new EV coming out from Mace.
Yes.
When do we expect that to hit the market?
So by next year, 2024, it's going to be an SUV vehicle.
Nice.
So we've seen the demand in vehicles in general, SUV being one of the most demanded vehicles. And not just that, we're looking to cater for the masser market, Oman, Saudi, and UAE. We understand there is a bigger need in terms of electric SUVs. And not just that, we've also enhanced the technology that it can be that anyone driving his car, he can just enjoy a pleasurable experience, talking to the car, having conversations as if you're having a real friend with you in your driving experience.
Haider, Engineer Abdullah, thank you very much for joining us today. I've enjoyed this conversation and learning more about Mace and Nafath and some of the exciting developments in manufacturing in Oman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this Tejarah Talks podcast, please do share it with your network. Until then, stay curious.
Tejarah Talks.